And welcome everyone to our kickoff session of the fall 2023 series of Tuesday Times Roundtable, Staying Competitive in High Stress Fields, Lessons on Health from Esports, led by our very own team at FIU Esports. TTR is the Office of Global Learning Initiative's flagship discussion series that brings together multiple perspectives on current global issues and trends. You can learn more about TTR, watch past recordings, or come back and reference this one at go.fiu.edu/TTR. If you haven't already, please take a moment right now to sign in using this QR code or the link that is being shared in the chat. This link will close at 1 p.m., so please take a moment now to sign in. My name is Michelle Zaldivar, your Senior Program Coordinator here at the Office of Global Learning Initiatives. A special thank you to our brand new graduate assistants this semester, Natalia and Gitanjali, who are monitoring the chat and answering your questions. Medallion students, remember to take a quick screenshot of that sign-in so that you can include that in your points log. If you'd like to learn more about opportunities at the Office of Global Learning Initiatives, check out our student programs at goglobal.fiu.edu/students. TTR is a weekly series that highlights global issues and trends and is always linked to an article where you can learn more. You can read the article for this week's session at go.fiu.edu/TTR0905. FIU provides anyone with an @fiu.edu email address to free digital access to the New York Times. So if you haven't done so already, make sure to activate your subscription at accessnyt.com. Today's session leaders are Dr. Oren Shibi and Patrick Cornejo. Dr. Oren Shibi is a licensed psychologist with over 6 years of counseling, psychotherapy, and assessment experience. He received his doctorate in psychology and clinical psychology from Nova Southeastern University and has extensive training and clinical work experiences in individual, group, and family therapy. Dr. Shibi is currently a university psychologist here at FIU's Counseling and Psychological Services Center, where he provides individual and group psychotherapy to students, as well as assessments of learning disabilities and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. He believes strongly in guiding clients on their journey for personal growth by assisting them in transforming obstacles to opportunities and replacing destructive coping mechanisms with adaptive ones. He is joined today by Patrick Cornejo, who serves as the Esports Coordinator for Esports Department here at FIU. His goal in collegiate esports is to create and facilitate a student leadership and development program for esports student athletes. He recently completed his MS in Higher Education Administration here at FIU and completed his BA in Communications in Old Dominion University, where he served as the esports club president and competed in collegiate Overwatch and successfully organized the first public 4-year university varsity program in the state of Virginia. Please join me in welcoming our speakers for today's session, Staying Competitive in High Stress Fields, Lessons from Esports. Patrick, I'll turn it over to you.
So yeah, hey, welcome here. Dr. Shibi, if you could share your screen. Mainly for this TTR, I'm going to be moderating and handling questions, but as we have the presentation up, we can have Dr. Shibi talk a little about himself, as well as we have introductions for the student panel. So yeah, Dr. Shibi, you can take it away. Yep.
Thanks, Patrick. Thank you all. Thank you, Michelle, for the introduction. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you for the panel. I'm excited to be here. A little disclaimer, I'm not a gamer myself. So even though I've played over the years some things, Street Fighter and Clash of Clans and PUBG, and most recently Mario Kart with my daughters, by no means I'm not a gamer. So definitely looking forward to also learning from all of you. And so even though I'm familiar with some of the mental health aspects of things, I'm looking forward to learning about your experiences as well. Can you all see my slide okay without the notes? We're good to go? All right, perfect. right, Patrick, you want to introduce the panel?
Yeah, so here we have the student panel. Can I have y'all unmute just in order to get started with Henry and talk a little bit about yourself? Just briefly, we have some of your bullet points here, so feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right. Hi guys, my name's Henry Grau. I'm relatively new to the esports club. I've only been here for about a year, but I really like the club and I really like everyone that's in the community. So I decided to run for an executive board position. So I'm the risk management officer of the esports club. So I just basically make sure whenever we have like an event or something like that, there's no like any risk involved or any dumb things going on. And then I personally enjoy Overwatch with FIU for also about a year now, and I've loved it. I was the captain for the blue team in the spring semester, and I'm the captain for the blue team again in this fall semester, and hopefully I can keep that going into the next spring semester coming up. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I love the esports club, and I like everyone involved in it, and Patrick's the GOAT.
Right. Hi, my name is Jose Garcia-Chirino, otherwise known as Narnia. I am a professional player for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I'm also a coach for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and also an advisor. I help run multiple organizations here in this local scene of South Florida. I have been competing for upwards of, I believe, 4 or 5 years now, and I've been in FIU esports for about 2 years now. So I'm very happy to see how it's been growing and progressing throughout all this time.
Hello, my name is Gavin Marzan. I play FIU Halo Gold Panther team, along with joining 3 other teams when I first came here from University of North Florida. But before I came here, I was on the Valorant A team at the time of University of North Florida. And I recently joined the committee around this summer, and I've been with the club for about 3 years.
All right, so nice meeting you all, and I understood from Patrick that we might have both folks that are familiar with esports and maybe some folks are on the panel that are less familiar. And so with that said, I'm going to give a little bit of an overview and an introduction for those also that are less familiar. Let me see here. I just need to switch this around a bit. Okay, so electronic sports or esports is viewed as competitive and organized video gaming, and it's becoming an accepted form of sports. So I think it's just a matter of time before we see you all in the Olympics. There's been a rapid increase on a global scale in the popularity of esports worldwide, and this is evidenced by the exponential growth in participation, media coverage, viewership, sponsorship, and commercialization. Some of the statistics that I read is just showing it to be billions of dollars worth of an industry and just growing. Globally, esports have been increasingly recognized as a competitive sport activity in various contexts. And this is evidenced by the establishment of Esports Europe, which includes 23 national esports organizations. It's now recognized by the NBA. We have the formation of the National Association of Collegiate Sports, as well as the addition of esports in college and athletic competitions, high school associations. These are all evidence of its growth. And so given the rapidly expanding popularity of esports and video gaming and the accelerating growth, there is a gap of scientific research addressing the public health implications, both mental health, physical health of the esports phenomenon. And so hopefully we can address some of this today as far as the preliminary research that's out there. But overall, there is a lack of knowledge about the potential health benefits, and I'll try to talk also about some of the health benefits and not just focus on the negative things. But my area of expertise is probably the behavioral risks that it carries with it. So esports, especially virtual sports and action-based video games, share some common physical and mental demands with non-digital sports, and that esports also require motor skills, mental agility, processing speed, executive function, motivation, and to a lesser extent, but still so, physical exertion. And so some limited research indicates that these video games or esports games, whether played cooperatively or competitively, can be beneficial in building skills related to cognitive ability, reading ability, reaction time, and sensory motor skills. And as the popularity continues to soar, Players predominantly being younger individuals or school-age children, adolescents, as well as college athletes, because of the speed in which many of these games are played and the psychological intensity of the competition, contenders or athletes, they undertake extensive training to establish proficiency in the use of the devices. And they develop fast reaction time, rapid decision making in this virtual competitive environment. And this is critical, obviously, for winning and having success in esports, but the intensity that's required of the training and required for the competitive esports games paradoxically also necessitates sitting in the same position for hours at a time in front of a computer, and essentially enduring high levels of stress, high levels of a need for visual attention, blue light exposure, repetitive small muscle movements, which together can equate to a sedentary lifestyle and consequently an unhealthy lifestyle at times. So some of our current knowledge is that digital gaming and esports make it easy to identify potential adverse health effects that may result from sustained and stressful training and fierce competition, which is often encountered by high-level esports game players. So this finding is especially evident when considering the fact that most participants are young, school-aged, adolescents, high school, college, who compete in physically and mentally demanding environments, often exposing them to negative risks with harmful outcomes. So one study showed that 40% of college esport players reported not participating in any other form of physical activity. This is where I really like the article that we read for today, which often now takes kind of like a different approach, which I enjoyed reading. Patrick, do you have a question here, or should I keep going?
I do. We actually have the first questions to the student panel. So I have about 2 questions here. So the first question, to everyone, feel free to Henry and all y'all. How does the competitive nature of esports impact the mental well-being of players? So I mean, that's a general statement. Feel free to answer that.
So I guess I'll just speak to my personal experience. Excuse me. But it hasn't necessarily like impacted our mental health. It does take up like, you know, a good amount of time during my like week and stuff like that. Like I do have to set aside like sometimes like 6 or 8 hours a week just to, you know, practice and and get proficient at the game and stuff like that. In regards to mental health, it is a little bit stressful sometimes, but I found that I personally am able to manage it. You know, I do go to the gym whenever I get a chance. I'm also involved in a lot of other clubs at FIU and stuff, and I do feel like it's just, you know, having that responsibility and like having that time management to like, you know, be like, okay, today at Tuesday, I got to practice from like 6 to 8. But then like after that, I can do homework, or like I can go to the gym, or like before that, I should go to the gym and do all that stuff. It's just kind of like having a balance of, you know, everything. You can't like necessarily like completely indulge yourself in it. But, you know, I'm just speaking from my personal point of view.
Yeah, I'll definitely
As
add on to that. Oh, I'm sorry.
you can go ahead,
Uh,
it's fine.
Oh, thank you. No. Yeah, so I'll add on to that. Definitely it could be a challenge. Definitely balancing gaming with work and then school, because it's always like you got to get those stuff done. So for me, it's kind of the opposite. It's not I'll go to the gym when I get the chance. I have like a set schedule to where I'll get my classwork done, and if I get that done early, then I can go out and about and do my own thing. Because as many people say that I'm a gamer, I actually don't like being indoors all the time. I like exploring and going out. So contrary to belief, I like to do stuff outside. But you know, I'll sit at a game for maybe 3, 4 hours and grind, make sure that I have my skills sharpened and everything for, like, you know, say today's matches. So it's definitely not a strain, I would say, but it has its challenges, and it's really just about how you tackle them, I'd say.
Yeah, and as for me, I have a lot of more on the mental health side. I think it's very important to be very organization where you have a lot of organization, because a lot of the time there's many weeks where I might have 5 days where I'm busy with something related to esports. There might be some weeks where I have one day only dedicated to it. And it's like recognizing the time that I have to put in and recognizing how much I have to build around it. Because obviously I have schoolwork, I have work, I have all this stuff. I have to make sure I take care of myself so that I'm not just burning out everything at once.
Okay, so I saw the question about like jitters and all that, which leads to my next question and last question for this part is performance anxiety. So, it's a common challenge in sports and like esports in general. So, what techniques or practices have y'all, used to manage the anxiety or like have dealt with that and, perform optimally in your title under pressure?
I can probably answer this really well because when I first started competing, I actually had a huge issue with nerves because competing at a high level is very difficult when you have so much pressure around you that it becomes stressful and it almost affects your entire play and affects how you perform. So at the time, it was very difficult for me, and then I started taking a bunch of like yoga classes to like control my breath, make sure my emotions are in check. And to be honest, I still do get nerves because nerves will never go away. You can ask any NBA player and they'll say the same thing, that they will still get nervous whenever they're shooting a three throw, but it's all about controlling it and understanding how to work with it and to make sure that you are at your best.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I'll definitely say jitters don't go away, but they do like subside. Say like when I play in my matches, like I'll be like, oh well, I'm diamond and these kids are onyxes and there's no chance that I'm gonna win. And obviously I'm not a surgeon, right? My hands aren't gonna be still. So, but as you play on, you'll realize that one, it's just the game, so you play as you play, and two, you might not be as bad as you think you are. So those jitters just kind of tend to go away. So like real athletes, I mean, you just kind of play your game and then you just keep your mental strong. Don't worry about what they're doing. You just run your own race.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like when I first started off competing, I was a little bit nervous in the first couple of games, and then like after a while, you just kind of get accustomed to it. It's like I don't want to say it's like an everyday thing, but you just get used to it kind of with like everything. Like, whenever you like when you first start college, it's a little bit nerve-wracking, and now you just, go through the motions like it's nothing. So at first it was a little bit nerve-wracking. It does get nerve-wracking like whenever you start off with a new team or whenever you're playing against a team that's sometimes a lot higher level than you or or like more skilled than you. That can be a little bit nerve-wracking, but I feel like having just like a good team behind you and like a good group of people around you when you're playing also helps you out a lot with that too. Just like everyone keeping each other and checking, like, no, you got this, or like, nah, man, like just because that guy's like a higher rank than you doesn't mean that he's, technically better than you, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, the jitters do kind of go away, like Jose and Gavin kind of mentioned, they kind of do always stay a little bit, but they kind of like, I guess you would say like level down. So it's not like as bad as when you first start.
Okay, thank you for that. Shibi, we can go ahead.
Sure. Thank you all. So I definitely enjoyed hearing from our panel that they're protecting time for self-care. I always talk to students about the fact that you can go to the best psychologist in the world, and if you're not eating right, not sleeping right, not getting any sunlight or physical activity, you're not going to feel good. That's just for the most part widely agreed upon. So I liked hearing how you all find the balance and how you have managed stress and jitters and anxiety and these kind of like high intense situations. I would say another thing that we often find is how do we relate to our anxiety? What kind of relationship do we have with the stress or with anxiety? So for example, public speaking can be something that can often cause anxiety for folks. And if so, if you start to feel the physiological symptoms of anxiety, like heart beating fast, feeling flushed, jittery voice, and all those kinds of things, and you're thinking, oh no, I'm getting anxious. Oh no, this is, they're going to notice. Oh no, what's that going to do to your anxiety? You're going to start kind of like spiraling out. And I can think also in gaming, if you start to notice the physiological symptoms, but you relate to it in a negative way, oh no, kind of a thing, it's only going to make it worse, as opposed to, all right, this is my body kind of getting myself ready for this high intense situation. I know that the first minutes are going to be kind of worse, but like after a few minutes, I'm going to start to habituate and I'm going to be able to perform to my best. So a lot of the self-talk and how we relate to our stress and our anxiety is really important as well. So I liked hearing some of that, and I can get back to some of those strategies in a little bit. So when I talk about some of these commonly identified negative health outcomes, I'm talking about some of the research that's out there. Obviously, it's not going to pertain to all of you, but some of the things that have been documented to date include things like stress, sleep disturbances, vision problems, musculoskeletal pain, overuse injuries, metabolic disorders or weight gain, and other behavior problems such as addiction, aggression, violence. Some studies show that college students who spend significant amount of time, from anywhere from 5 to 10 hours in front of screens playing esports, suffered from things like eye fatigue, as well as neck, back, wrist, and hand pains. And I mentioned the addiction and overuse injuries and obesity and doping behaviors, all of which can result from the highly competitive nature and a lucrative reward system inherent in esports.
So another question I'm just gonna add there real quick. So to the panel, I know a big thing with gaming is sleep. So, essential for, cognitive recovery and concentration. And even I find myself, if I'm playing Valorant and I don't have any sleep, it's hard for me to focus. So, what practices can, gamers adopt to ensure that they are getting quality sleep? Or, feel free to talk about your sleep schedule and, how you're kind of managing that with everything else.
So one tip for sure I would give people is do not drink energy drinks. I kind of have fallen, not in like, I don't want to say I fall into that like, category, but I definitely have been the type to be like, yo, I'm tired, but I had to like do something tonight. Like, I'll just have a Red Bull or a Monster or whatever. And then when you drink those, you're not going to sleep till like 3 or 4 in the morning. And then when you got to wake up the next day for like a class at like 8 or 10 in the morning, it's not fun. I do still get my 8 hours. I kind of get them in a weird way. Sometimes I won't lie to you, my sleep schedule is kind of messed up. I do go to sleep at like sometimes 2 or 3 in the morning usually, but I wake up like around like 11 or 12 depending, and I kind of try and base my schedule around it. I know it's not healthy and it's not ideal, and I'm trying to work on it. But I guess one tip for me is just don't fall into the energy drink like hole. It's not healthy, and on top of that, it's kind of costly too, because like you kind of start like getting dependent on it, and it's like, oh, I'm tired, let me just have another one and stuff like that. So definitely don't fall into that part.
One thing that I do personally is that I have a cutoff time of when I stop. So like if it's on a weekday and I have class the next day, I have a cutoff at around 11 p.m. Maybe if it's a weekend and I don't have anything, I might have a cutoff at 1 a.m. But I make sure I have a hard cutoff, because if I stay up for so long, it's gonna start affecting me the next day, and it'll affect me the next day, and it starts spiraling and going out of control. So I want to make sure that I get as much sleep, because sometimes I might wake up in the morning and feel like, oh, I shouldn't have done that the night before. I should have gone to bed earlier. But it's making sure that I have that self-awareness. I have, I believe, 6 or 7 alarms on my phone just to make sure that, hey, you're going to sleep at this time and you're doing good. Yeah.
I mean, I can definitely second the definitely don't fall into the energy drink trap. Uh, it can be really hard. And I worked at a movie theater and they would have me close till like 2 in the morning, so I'd be up anyway. But then just to stay up till 1, I'd have to down a Red Bull, get the rest of my shift done, and then sometimes I'd even stay up, like pull a, what do you call it? It's not an all-nighter, but you just like stay up all night and then you go out throughout your day and then just fall asleep whenever you're done with whatever you're doing. So I've done that numerous amounts of times. It's not healthy, and it's definitely not good if you're trying to practice for like say a big event like esports, lands, or such like that. So I wouldn't recommend it, but I have been in that hole, yeah. So don't get into Red Bull drinks too much. Keep a consistent sleep schedule. And if you're gonna go overboard, at most 30 minutes. And then just get off, turn it off.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the one thing you can take away from this is no energy drinks. I know I'm struggling with that as well as a gamer on the side too. But yes, sleep is very important. Dr. Shibi, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoy caffeine as well, more so in the form of coffee, but definitely what you all said as far as moderating your caffeine use is important. And being kind of like your own parent, if you will, as far as cutting off at a certain point. I know I've worked with students and clients that tell me, I close my eyes and I'm still seeing kind of like the game in front of me on the back of my eyelids almost. And so I'm kind of like, all right, what time are you cutting it off? And what are you playing? And so, if you just got done, obliterating zombies or whatever the case may be, you know, you're stimulated. Your body might even be in what we call sympathetic dominance. You're in like fight or flight mode because you just played a war game or whatever the case may be, a high intensity game that we've been talking about. So your body is not ready for rest and digest, right? If rest and digest mode, you can become the lion's lunch, so to speak. So we got to give ourselves that window to wind down. And encourage each of you to kind of have that wind down routine of how do you move your body from fight or flight mode, sympathetic dominance, to rest and digest. And for each folks, that might be different, but definitely avoiding caffeine and cutting off at a certain point can be helpful. And then having your wind down routine without screens can be great. Definitely some folks, I know you're students and grad students, and you know, we also have our survival needs and work, but definitely there's an impact to having to work night shifts on our sleep cycle, and that's a hard one for sure. So I'll let you know that some esports players and gamers that we work with sometimes will develop depression because of their gaming habits. Because as they start playing more and more, they might begin to neglect other aspects of their lives. For example, some might not have as many social relationships or might ignore healthy habits such as exercise and diet. You all probably know more about some of these phenomenons than me, but I had a client told me about a YouTube phenomenon who would play like 24 hours straight, sitting in their diaper and just kind of keep going, kind of a thing for without a stop, and you know, had millions of viewers and you know, probably made a lot of money, but at some cost, I would say probably. So there's definitely a lot of research and literature out there that does show that there is a connection between excessive gaming and depression. There's a clear link between the two. So again, kind of referencing back to that article, it's not coincidence that they've shifted to, all right, eating well, sleeping well, exercising, having your psychologist or sports psychologist or therapist to, I think, to unpack things or clear out the bag. I think they call it something like that. Now, a lot of people also might turn to gaming because they might have some social anxiety to begin with and maybe struggle with physical relationships or in real life relationships, if you will. So sometimes games can offer an escape from your life and maybe opportunity to socialize with others online with little or no risk. But in some ways that can maintain the problem of social anxiety in that folks might start neglecting real life relationships or worsening their existing social anxiety, and that can be harmful at times. So those are a couple things to consider. And obviously, it may be different for some folks. I hear a lot of you are involved in other extracurricular activities and meet in person and do a lot of the good things that are good for you all as well. But just some things to consider that some folks might be struggling with.
Okay. Oh, are you gonna go over this real quick?
No, please go ahead.
Yes. So just with that, I have two things. So one to kind of highlight more on the social isolation, and two is on toxicity. So the first question for the panel, of course, we spoke about how esports can kind of lead into social isolation, especially with the online nature. You know, what have you seen here at FIU, or in general, what initiatives do you all think would be best or best practices for collegiate esports programs to, you know, or just the pro play itself is, you know, foster a sense of community and, you know, reduce these feelings?
So definitely having more in-person stuff. Like I know when I was a captain of the blue team in the spring, I kind of like met up with everyone at the beginning in person at the Chili's on campus. And we didn't even like talk about like any gaming stuff. I just sat down and got to know everyone individually, know what they like and dislike, and like, you know, their names and their faces and stuff like that. And you know, every time we would get a win and stuff like that, I'd get them Starbucks. I was like, yo, if we win, I will get you guys Starbucks. Like nothing crazy, like just like a small drink because I don't got money like that. But you know, definitely having more stuff in person is better because it gets those people out of their shell, and it also gives that sense of community, like you said, because one thing is having that, like, you know, sense of like community virtually, but it's completely different when you meet up in person. And I know like esports people sometimes get like a bad rap that they're like socially like not as socially excellent as some people, and to an extent that is true. But I met a lot of people in the esports club and in the Overwatch team that are people that really put themselves out there, obviously it takes them a little bit more of a push to do it, but I feel like if we just have more in-person stuff, like whether it be like an open game night or just like literally going out to eat with them and stuff like that, they definitely get themselves more out there, and it creates that sense of community. And that's kind of why I've decided to take more roles and more like leadership positions within the esports clubs. I really like the people that were in it, and I wanted to like kind of put my vision into the club in a sense.
I can definitely second that. Just talk to your teammates for sure. Before I got to FIU, I was also in like a really bad state because back then I used to play lacrosse, and if you don't know, that's a very physical game, and it took a lot out of me every single day to be going out to practice for like 4 hours and coming home breaking something like my thumb. I broke one time, and then I came home and I had to play a Valorant tournament with a broken thumb. So uh, it was it's tough. It's definitely like a tough aspect to be facing. But in terms of social anxiety, I'd say if you have trouble starting, games are like a good place to start. But I wouldn't use like your talking sense in game like in real life, because obviously you're behind a screen, you're anonymous. Like people can say anything they want and you won't know who they are ever. So you can use it as like a starting point, being like hey guys, what's going on, but nothing further from that, I would say, because then it just turns into a whole thing. But yeah, no, just I think the lesson here is just to keep trying, even if it doesn't feel like it's working or you feel like an idiot. Just one more, as they always say, just give it one more.
As for me, the esport that I play is very much more social in person because a lot of the events are in person. There are a lot of LAN events, so I'm very lucky to say that I met so many people in person as well online. So it's very, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's easier than some people who might be trapped in their rooms playing video games, that they're able to meet with new people, get that social interaction that might is really necessary to like maintain like a social balance and a good mental health about it.
I do have let me ask the next question on toxicity real quick. So, of course, the online nature of esports can kind of expose players to, varying levels of toxicity and harassment. So, are there any strategies, y'all use to kind of combat that or deal with that as you navigate, the online and offline gaming space?
So I never really experienced that in person, thankfully, because I think a lot of people when they're in person, they kind of get scared of doing those kind of things. So, like if something happens, like, they could get like hurt if they say something really messed up. But online, there is a lot of people that get really toxic because obviously, like Gavin said, they're hiding behind the screen. They're anonymous. A lot of the time, you don't know who they are, and they'll say a lot of messed up things. Like I've had people call me slurs and stuff like that in games, and it's obviously messed up. But I can't control what they say. Honestly, I just ignore them. I know it's like a dumb thing to say, but like they're on our screen. I don't know who they are. I could care less who they are. Like, and a lot of games already have like features in place where you can like mute the person or block them and stuff like that. Like, just if you let them get to you, like that's like when they've won. Like, you really just have to ignore them because like that's what they kind of feed off of, which is your attention. And if you give them that light of day, they're gonna like keep going and keep bothering you. Like, you can always just like block them, and they can't really bother you unless they're like really creepy and they start like finding out your like other accounts and stuff and like messaging you from other accounts. That's a whole nother level, which at that point I'd probably like take that to another level, maybe like contact like the support of the game. But in regards to like one-on-one, like people being toxic to me, it's just best to ignore them because like I said, giving them that attention is gonna add fuel to the fire.
I can definitely
Right.
agree with that from Henry, just because when it comes to like toxicity in games, uh, the what do they call it? The game designers actually thought about this. Who would have thought, right? And they made this thing called the mute button, where you just turn up your audio if it's like a LAN event. I recently was casting for a CS:GO event, and it gets super loud with like trash talk and trying to get into the mind of the game. So if it gets like too much, if you're at a LAN event, just always pull somebody aside, saying like, "Hey, do you mind?" Like just standing there, make sure that they don't say anything, and if they do, like make sure they know that's not right, or just mute them on game or turn up the audio in your headset, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what they say. It's about how you play. And it's like egoists. Esports gamers are big egoists. So anything you say or do, they're gonna find a way to manipulate that and turn it into like, oh, you're talking to me, but you're all the way down there on the leaderboard. So it's just best to ignore it.
Kind of a follow-up question to the panel. I'm curious how you all. So I definitely hear you, and I think it's a good strategy when when the attack is on you, to ignore it. But if you're witnessing an attack on someone else, I'm curious to hear what does the kind of community or in general what happens? Is it addressing the person that attacked, addressing the person that was the victim, everybody just kind of ignoring and moving on? What typically happens is something I'm curious about.
It's depending on what
Um,
they said. I think would be the biggest thing. It's about what they said.
Yeah, for at least for Overwatch, since it's like a team game, a lot of the time if you have like one person on like the team, let's say like you're playing with 4 people and like you get one random guy that's being like really weird, a lot of the time everyone would just gang up on that one guy. I know it's not like a healthy response, but a lot of times people would just like gang up and be like, yo, what are you doing? Like you suck, etc., etc. It's kind of like, I guess, fighting fire with fire, which I guess in like the grand scheme of things is not the healthiest thing to do or the smartest thing to do. But it just kind of happens like with the competitive nature of like sports, even like in like soccer or like any other sport, like you'll see it happen like even in like FIFA and stuff like that. Like, you know, if they mess with one of their players, like then the whole team gets around and like they start arguing and all that stuff. It's just kind of like, it's just what happened. Obviously I recognize it's not the healthiest thing to do, but that's just kind of how it happens.
Henry, absolutely. And if you've ever watched hockey, you know that if somebody like, you know, have you ever seen those videos where they wreck the goalie or they push him on the ground? Literally everybody's taking their gloves off and starting to fight the other guy. So it's like regular sports. Like if as soon as you're coming after one guy, you're coming after the whole team. And if it's like really messed up, and let's say you're at a LAN, there's employees there, and they'll definitely be like, "Hey, you need to tone it down, or your team's gonna get a penalty or a reduction in eco." You know, there's always like stuff to combat, you know, people that go just a little bit too far, but trash talk is part of the game because if it was just skill, then nobody would watch. You know?
Well, yeah, I'll definitely have a. Oh, Jose, go ahead.
I was gonna say for me, it's since in LAN events, it's a lot more uncommon because in person you don't have that reliance on anon being anonymous, but it's really about diffusing the situation because you never really there might be someone who's having a bad day and they're obviously expressing it through how they are and talking to people. So for me, especially as an organizer for events, it's all about diffusing the situation, saying, "Hey, I understand you're upset. Just go outside and just relax for a little bit, or just take a while off." And then obviously, if it escalates, I have to handle with further action. But it's normally doesn't come down to that because most of the time people realize, wait, okay, maybe I'm just a little upset. I'll take a second.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, y'all. It's, you know, really good to see kind of how to combat that and how to diffuse the situation. Just for time's sake, I'm gonna pause on the questions of the panel and everything. Dr. Shibi, you know, take it away till the very end, and then we can continue with the Q&A at the end.
Sure. Whatever everybody wants. I enjoy the discussion, so the engagement is good on my end. Even if we don't go through every single slide, I'd rather have engagement and discussion, but we can definitely, I'll move forward. I'll share a little tip from, I guess, more so what we do in group therapy sometimes if there's what we might call a microaggression or some bias or discrimination or something happens, rather than the tendency to right away kind of like jump at the aggressor, to first kind of like check in with the person who maybe have received the insult and kind of like support them, see what they need, and maybe they're good and nothing happened, or maybe they could use some support as opposed to kind of like right away maybe scapegoating the aggressor, so to speak. So that's something from group therapy, may or may not work for the gaming esports setting, but that's something to consider. Because definitely there's a lot of ongoing stories about the esports culture, and that's something that you all, I think, are going to be in charge of changing some of the current views or stereotypes that the culture is surrounded by sexism, misogyny, racism, homophobia. So some of the stories include vicious online anti-feminist movement, Gamergate, proponents of which target and harass female gamers and game designers. And there's been stories in 2018, sexual harassment of esports players and fans by coaches, team managers. So the narratives have kind of constituted a toxic culture of harassment in the esports world. And I hear you all as far as like trash talking is one thing, and then there's another kind of like level to it. And so, you know, wanting to kind of put that as a disclaimer. But there was one esports reporter that depicted the esports community as a hostile, competitive environment where emotions run high and insults are part of the landscape. So I don't know how true y'all feel about this, but I think some things, a little acronym that we use is PAUSE. And the idea is to prepare what you might do or say when this does happen. And then maybe rather than right away scapegoating a person who was the aggressor, kind of approaching with curiosity to address the comment. Ultimately, decide what are the goals of the members or the group. What are some of your values that you want to emphasize when this does occur? And then making sure that the person that was a victim of something like that is safe and without necessarily scapegoating the aggressor, like I said earlier. And then kind of elevate it to the group level. So what as a group do you want to do when this happens, and having maybe some discussions around this can be helpful. There's a bunch of training strategies that can promote mutual respect, fair play, reduce cyberbullying, and some of the toxicity that is currently talked about. So, but from what I heard from you all are ambassadors of this at the moment, so that's awesome. So something that I want all of you to think about is the things that matter to you, your values, what's most meaningful for you, the things that you care about, because all these things require time. So I often ask students about, you know, what do you want? What do you care about? What's important to you? And so folks will often talk about their family, their friends, their hobbies, maybe if they have a spiritual connection, significant other. And then at some point they'll talk about career and school, and maybe gaming if that's part of their lives. So then I asked them to write down construct some sort of a pie chart for me, and then write the percentages of the time that they spend on each of these things. And what a lot of times ends up happening is 99% of your time is dedicated towards school or gaming, or 99% of the time is gaming and school. And then that leaves 1% for family, friends, significant other, hobbies, exercise, self-care, all that kind of good stuff. So that right there is a nice recipe for maybe a depressive episode or anxiety episode. And so once we start splitting that pie a little bit more evenly and making sure that we're protecting time for the things and the people that are important to us, we're going to be in better shape. That's one of the things that they promoted in the article. One of the things that I hear from the panel that you're already doing that's been helpful for you. So just thinking about your goals and what's important to you, and then start working towards it, protecting time for the things that are important to you. So I think, I was a little bit of the devil's advocate here as far as like saying a little bit about some of the not so great things about gaming or esports. But gamers and games are also providing rewards that reality is not. They're teaching and inspiring and engaging us in ways that reality is not, bringing us together in ways that reality is not. So unless something dramatic happens, we're on our way to becoming a society in which a substantial portion of our population devotes its greatest efforts to playing games and creating its best memories in game environments and experiences its biggest successes in game worlds. So when we play a good game, we get to practice being the best version of ourselves, being more optimistic, more creative, more focused, maybe setting ambitious goals, more resilient in the face of failure. When we play these multiplayer games, we become more collaborative, more likely to help others. We can trust each other more after playing together. And maybe if we lose, more importantly, supporting each other and playing a game with someone can be an incredibly effective way to get to know their strengths, their weaknesses, what motivates them, And this is exactly the kind of social knowledge we need to be able to cooperate, collaborate with people, and tackle real world challenges. So a lot of benefits there too. So don't say just kind of like focus on the negative here. A lot of good stuff comes out of this. I mentioned earlier there are some gaps in the research, but I'll tell you overall, we need more research to address the mental health issues resulting from competitive esports gaming, including things like gaming addiction, burnout, cyberbullying, intimidation, discrimination. We want to find out whether participation in esports leads to increased motivation or maybe decrease in engaging in things like sports or physical activity. We want to research the adverse health risks associated with excessive and prolonged training and playing of esports, the level of physical fitness that is needed, mechanism underlying some of the overuse injuries, potential gender gaps and differences regarding esports training and competition, the impact of the physical inactivity that might be caused sometimes, associations between levels of energy expenditure during esports gaming and their health consequences, any long-term health consequences of video game playing, and then the extent to which active games can actually serve as a healthier alternative to sedentary screen time play. So those are all areas that we can learn more about. There's some research out there that I've included in this presentation, but obviously a lot is lacking. Overall, we want to work on creating a destigmatizing environment where mental health help seeking is normalized. It's a core function of training and self-care. We want to attend to the stressors that may diminish well-being and predispose to mental health symptoms and disorders, including an excessive training load. And how do we support athletes and esports athletes to find that balance between work, life, competition, relationships, so they're not worried, going on like 0 hours of sleep only to stay afloat, kind of a thing. We want to foster positive psychological development and well-being by helping learn to respond to stressors in healthy ways, by, for example, having a sports psychologist as part of the team. Or creating an environment where it's normal and normalized and supported to seek help if needed, and helping athletes learn skills that promote resilience, psychological flexibility, self-compassion, and adaptation to situational demands while staying consistent with their values. And then de-emphasizing achievements and outcomes, and instead fostering a process-oriented mindset in which effort and improvement are emphasized. Patrick, how am I doing? Keep going, or you want to pause for anything?
Oh, we're good. I think it was like a few more slides left anyway. So
okay. So overall, we're looking to have a commitment to improve the mental health of esports gamers. I think that doing so will reduce suffering, improve quality of life of esports athletes, and recognize that mental health symptoms and disorders should be viewed in a similar light as other medical illnesses. So, our bodies is not just some sort of a vessel that carries our head around. Mind, body are one, and so we need to treat mental health challenges in the same light that we do medical illness. All of them can be severe, disabling, and just treating mental health is an integral dimension of well-being and performance. Some of the things that we can do, and I know one of you mentioned doing yoga, and that yoga has been helpful to you. Things like mindfulness, grounding exercise, meditation. There's different imagery. You can download a bunch of apps out there these days that can be helpful with that. I know some students like Headspace. There's other called Calm, there's Insight Timer, a lot of resources out there that you can protect time daily for some mindfulness practice, grounding, meditation, positive imagery. There's muscle relaxation that you can do, and diaphragmatic breathing. So all kinds of breathing techniques out there to help prepare you for a game, but also on a daily basis to help lower those stress levels as you're looking to balance all the things that you're involved in. And then an increase of awareness into your unhelpful thinking styles, also known as cognitive distortions. So many of you probably engage in catastrophic thinking, and that's the kind of thinking where we're always expecting worst case scenario. So if you lose an event, you're gonna end up homeless under a bridge kind of a thinking. And when we're thinking in that way, it's usually increasing our anxiety, impeding our performance. And so in reality, kind of putting things in perspective, and then connecting to things outside of the competition as well. Well, win or lose, I still have the things that I value of family, friends, significant other, whatever case may be, can also be helpful. And then learning to be your own best friend, or your own best coach, or your own best cheerleader, as opposed to your own drill sergeant. So I'm sure some of you have probably said to yourself things that are worse than some of that toxic banter that already happens online, but you've directed it towards yourself in certain moments. And we've all done that. We've all been very hard on ourselves at times. But how do we change that so that we can be our own loving parent, best friend, cheerleader, or some things that we might work towards, and sometimes do in therapy as well, as help ourselves be more self-compassionate. So overall, in conclusion, we are committed to improve the mental health of elite athletes and esports athletes, recognizing that doing so will reduce suffering, improve the quality of life in elite athletes, and also serve as a model for society at large. We want to increasingly recognize that mental health symptoms and disorders should be viewed in a similar light as other medical illnesses. And just like musculoskeletal injuries, mental health also challenges can be severe, disabling, and all can be managed by properly well-informed medical providers, coaches, and other stakeholders. So overall, in conclusion, mental health is an integral dimension of esports, elite athletes, well-being, and performance. It cannot be separated from physical health. And so we need mental health assessment and management in athletes, and it should be commonplace and accessible as their other medical care. So ideally, esports athletes should have access to the best interdisciplinary care, which includes mental health. And we need as a whole to advance a more unified, evidence-informed approach to mental health assessment and management in athletes and esports athletes. And I think the New York Times article really speaks to that interdisciplinary care of the esports athletes, and how that ultimately contributed to actual success in the tournaments themselves. So I'm looking forward to hearing more how FIU Esports is doing more of that, and I'm happy to support in any way I can as far as CAPS is concerned. If folks need to come to CAPS and use us to unpack things or unload some of the baggage, we're the place for that, and you can definitely reach out to me if you're needing more tips or any questions as far as how to connect to CAPS. I'd be happy to do that. So with that said, I'm going to be turning it over to Patrick.
Yes, so that kind of concludes, the presentation side. The biggest thing I want, the students to see, for those that are in the audience watching, is please follow the 3 accounts above on Instagram. That's the FIU Esports club, technically, because we're in a transition now of getting our own social media. But if you follow those 3 on Instagram and fill out the survey below, the first 5 students will receive a giveaway package from Student Health and Wellness. So that's really cool. They have a lot of cool stuff on their end. Aside from that, we can open it up to anybody else has any lasting questions. If not, I have one question for the panel. We'll give it 5 seconds or a couple of seconds, while you do this, or if I have any questions. Or I can just start with my question, actually. So going back into mindfulness or mental techniques that are you using? I know some of them Headspace or stuff, or even myself is, before I do if I play Valorant, I do an eye tracking thing on YouTube, 60 FPS, and I just track, this orb that's flying everywhere, or play aim labs or stuff like that. So aside from mental and mindfulness, what do y'all do, to the panel? Do you do anything specific to either warm up or get into some sort of flow state or anything like that?
For me specifically, I do a lot more breathing exercises, because a lot of the game that I play is a lot about patience and making sure that you have that hand-eye coordination. So I do a lot of just breathing techniques to make sure that my emotions are in check, to make sure that I'm not exactly in I'm not in a rush state. I'm like constantly in a dilemma, but I'm more in a not zen state, but more just relaxed, and whatever happens. I'm more calm than anything. So I'll do like, I think, I don't know, about 9 minutes of breathing training, and then just go on from there. And if I need more, then I'll take a break and then continue from there.
Yeah, for me, I just kind of do like what you said. I do like aim training and stuff like that. Like I always play like I start an hour before like any game, that like before we have any kind of competitive game, I'll start an hour before and I'll play a couple games like online, and then I'll do like another like 30 minutes on like just aim training, like getting that aim ready to go. Cause like you have to, like, just like with like, soccer or like football or anything, you kind of got to get warmed up, like, practice shooting into the goal or running and whatnot, getting your legs warmed up. It's kind of like the same thing, getting like your brain to like register that your hands on the mouse and like you got to aim and all that stuff. Cause if you just go into it like cold, you're gonna be pretty much warming up in the middle of the game, which is never a good thing. So I just, like you said, I just do aim training basically.
You guys need aim training? No, I'm just playing. So for me, it's I don't follow an orb around, but as said on the panel, for me, I do iRacing, and that's pretty much how I measure up my for anyone who's played iRacing, I'm D class, which means like I'm still with all the beginners and such. So my reaction time needs to be like on par in order to race with them, because they can't drive. It's like driving on the 75, but everyone doesn't care about their car. So that's how I train for like my reaction times. In terms of aim training, I just hop into like the range. Say, let's take Valorant's example. I'll go into the practice range and start flicking on heads, and I'm seeing how I feel, changing my sense if I need to, even changing my mouse if I need to. If I just feel like today's not this day for the mouse, I'll just change it from like a Razer Viper V2 Pro to a Logitech Superlight, I believe it's called. So it's just whatever, and you just warm up maybe like an hour, give or take. I'd say Henry has a good regimen an hour before.
Yeah, I mean that's it from my end. Michelle, if you wanna kind of end it up here. But my one thing that I hate gaming chairs. Don't get gaming chairs. Get an office chair. Ergonomics is key. That's a big thing. Don't get a gamer chair.
Is it too low to the ground? Is that what it is?
No, it's just like I just like office chairs better. I think Dr. Shibi probably knows more into that, but like I just hate gaming chairs. It's cool for like your competition here and there, but the longevity, long term, I'd rather get like a steel case for Erman Miller or some of these like bigger brands.
Yeah, ergonomics, not necessarily my area of expertise, but I have a standing desk, which helps with sitting less. I don't know if that's conducive to gaming or not. But I also know from my chiropractor. Oops, are we still together?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Just aligning your shoulder, and your elbow and your hip can be kind of like a good kind of like position, so you're not in like some sort of a T-Rex position. So I know a chiropractor gave me that tip once, but I know it can be challenging.
That's a really good one. Thank you so much to the panel for joining us and sharing so much of your knowledge and experience, and good and bad. I love that we were able to really cover the breadth of the impact that esports is having on all sorts of communities. Thank you very much too for our audience for joining us. It is 1:30. I want to give a quick shout out to our TTR that will continue online next week. We have the Good Samaritan group. It's a nonprofit coming to talk to us about their fight against food insecurity, but also just the process of running a nonprofit and what that means in our current environment in the public sphere. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll hope to see you again next week, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.